Good morning. I am here going to talk this morning with you about the low protein diet. This is something that has thankfully become much more understood, much more known with kidney disease over the past few years. So today I'm going to talk about the low protein diet with you, answer your questions that you might have regarding protein and the low protein diet with CKD. So before I get into all of that, my name is Jen Hernandez. I am a renal dietitian. I'm the founder of Plant Powered Kidneys. And at Plant Powered Kidneys, we are a virtual nutrition service system in which we help people with chronic kidney disease learn about their best renal diet and what they should be doing, each individual person, what they should be doing to take care of their own kidney disease. Because as you probably know, kidney disease is unique to every person. It's really like a fingerprint that there is not one type of kidney disease that goes across the board for everybody. And even if you have the same stage or the same situation, even the same other health concerns, as somebody else you know who has kidney disease, there is a very good chance you have different nutrition needs, different dietary needs, and working with a dietitian one-on-one is the best way to get that personal information and input and to really understand what's going on with your kidney disease. So that's what we do here at Plant Powered Kidneys. And I am so excited, as always, to be live here with you all this morning. And thanks so much for joining. Good morning. Good morning. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the low protein diet. And this is something that is one of the absolute key pillars when it comes to creating the right nutrition plan for yourself. And essentially, almost everybody with CKD will have some variation of protein in their diet. So first of all, to understand what a low protein diet is, we really need to understand what just a regular protein diet is, because how do you know what's low if you don't know what the standard is? So the standard guidelines for protein is 0.8 grams per kilogram of your body weight. And depending on where your body weight is in relation to your height, so in part with your BMI and your weight, your body composition, you may have a little bit of a differential from that equation again. And that's where a dietitian can tell you exactly what your range should be. But in general, the regular protein amount that we should be getting is 0.8 grams per kilogram. The RDA, the recommended daily allowance for men and women for protein, is approximately 40 to 50-ish grams of protein. But a lot of people in general, health situations do tend to have more. And it's very, very common, especially here in the US, that people are getting more and more protein that they don't need. And that's even without kidney disease. So protein is not something that we are missing out on here. And that makes it really hard for people with kidney disease to follow a low protein diet, because in many cases, it feels like a super low amount of protein because we're comparing it to this idea of the norm, which is just so high in protein for the typical American diet. So anyway, first of all, the regular amount of protein. So that's what we just covered. Now, the benefits of a low protein diet when it comes to kidney disease. And when I say kidney disease, I'm talking about stages essentially 1 through 5. It becomes more strict on stage 5. Again, there's a little more fragility there with your kidneys compared to like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. But research has shown that even earlier stages of CKD can benefit from some protein modifications in their diet. But when it comes down to stage 5 before dialysis, that's where you really need to be careful and monitor your protein intake, because your kidneys are in a really sensitive situation. Now, for those on dialysis, this is not the information for you. Don't worry, stay tuned. In the upcoming weeks, I do have information to give you about protein with dialysis, because I do think it's important to discuss all these different realms. And I used to work in dialysis, so I'm very, very familiar with protein in dialysis. But those on dialysis, good morning. Those on dialysis should not be following a low protein diet, because the dialysis requires more protein. But essentially everybody else will probably have a modification of protein in their diet in some manner. And it could be pretty extreme. It might not be that much. It really, really depends. It's going to be a case by case basis. Oh yeah, up early, definitely up early. Good morning, everybody. All right. So some of the health benefits when it comes to the low protein diet, there's a lot of them, and it's really, really great. This is why it is one of the pillars when it comes to the renal diet. Protein is one of the top first focuses that you can be looking at to make some great results and progress with yourself. So some of the benefits that are included when it comes to following a lower protein diet or a low protein diet. For one of the first results I almost always see with all of my clients, a lower urea level. And this is seen in your blood urea nitrogen, or your BUN, in your renal lab test results. So if you guys remember, a while back, I did a video talking about your renal function panel. So you can go watch that video, or you can check out the article on plantpoweredkidneys.com. If you would like to go listen to or read up on the renal function panel, we go over so many things in there. But for the low protein diet, your BUN is one of the very first labs that you'll probably see have an improvement because it drops. There is less protein that is being metabolized in the body, therefore less urea that is being produced because of that metabolism of the protein. Another benefit when it comes to the low protein diet is you actually have a lower risk of metabolic acidosis. And this is absolutely fantastic because metabolic acidosis is rampant with kidney disease. In fact, when a person is on dialysis, and a lot of my experience I'll speak to is for people that have been on dialysis, because I've worked in dialysis, as I mentioned. So that's where a lot of my experience has just historically come from. But for people on dialysis, they have their dialysis machine that's cleaning their blood, and the bath, the cleaning solution, includes bicarbonate, and it helps offset the acidic state that the body is essentially put into when the kidneys aren't able to balance it. So having a lower protein diet not only is reducing that blood urea nitrogen, but it's also lowering that risk of metabolic acidosis, and it'll help you feel better. Metabolic acidosis is something that you might not realize is happening, but you just feel like junk. You don't feel good. You feel nauseous, no appetite. You feel lethargic. It is your internal system just being off. And that's why doing something like this, following a lower protein diet, can be so, so helpful. So that's another benefit. Another one that's really fantastic is less oxidative stress. Now, oxidative stress, if you think about not everyone, let me see. If you're familiar with antioxidants, let me know in the comments. You can just say yes, or bonus points if you can name something that has antioxidants. Let me know in the comments too, because that would be really, really fantastic. And the oxidative stress is something that is offset by a lower protein diet because of the way the protein is pushing towards this oxidative side. But you're removing the protein, you're lowering that risk of oxidation. And it also has to do with what you're putting into the diet, what you're adding back in when you're removing protein. Whenever you take something out, you've got to replace it with something. You're not going to eat an empty plate. It's got to be full of something. So what is that going to be? Yes, ivy, berries. Berries have antioxidants, and these antioxidants help offset these free radicals, these how do I want to explain it? These molecules that are potentially damaging to healthy cells. And by eating foods that have antioxidants in them, you are essentially winning that battle. You are overrunning any of those oxidative molecules that could be causing issues. And that's one of the great things about Plant Powered Kidneys. What we promote is more plants, including more plants, more fruits, more vegetables, AKA more antioxidants into your body to help you reduce that oxidative stress. Another benefit that not many people know about, but there is actually lower insulin resistance. Now, insulin resistance is related to diabetes, but it can also be related to just poor blood sugar control, pre-diabetes, even some those earlier non-diagnosed diabetic stages. So just having some abnormal blood sugars is not classifying as pre-diabetes or diabetes, but your body will respond better. And insulin is the gatekeeper of bringing sugar in from the blood into the cell for it to be utilized. And that's what it's there for. It's there to be our source of energy. So this lower protein diet will help take care and prevent that insulin resistance, because many people with kidney disease can also develop diabetes, type 2 diabetes. So it's something that's pretty common, and it's you already are dealing with kidney disease. We don't want to put other issues on top of it. So following a low protein diet can help with that insulin resistance prevention. But again, it all comes back to what are you going to replace in your diet with what you're taking out when you're reducing your protein. So hello, good morning, good afternoon. So people chiming in from different time zones and different places of the world. Very excited to have you all here. We're talking about the low protein diet today, and just going over right now some of the benefits. And then we're going to be talking more about some of the first steps, and I'll give you some ideas of what you can do to make that change into a low protein diet. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I will get to them as best as I can, either through the video or in the comments, but I love to have your questions and be able to answer them as much as I can. If you're watching live, so happy to have you here. It's Tuesday morning. I have my second cup of coffee. I have a mandatory 2 cups that I need to have. But if you are watching on replay later, let me know that you're watching replay. All right. So getting on to a couple more benefits when it comes to the low protein diet. One of my favorite ones as a dietitian is a low protein diet really helps with better control of phosphorus. And this is another thing that the protein foods, the protein rich foods, and typically we think of animal products, they do have phosphorus, whether it's organic or inorganic, there is phosphorus there. So we're reducing that amount of phosphorus in the diet, therefore better controlling your phosphorus. And this is something that is so critical in the long run. This is something that you may not realize is happening, kind of like the metabolic acidosis. And over time, it just kind of becomes harder and harder, because with high phosphorus comes attacks on the bones, and the bones get weaker, more fragile, more painful. So like joint pain, things that don't happen overnight necessarily, but things that can happen over time. And then once they happen, it is virtually impossible to repair it. Now, kidney disease itself doesn't have an actual cure. There are treatments, including transplant and dialysis and lifestyle changes, but there's no cure. There's no cure for kidney disease. So what we're looking at is how many things that we can do to offset these problems that will come up down the road, or that will accumulate or will cause other problems. So when we talk about something like the low protein diet, this is what we're really focusing on, is how can we preserve the kidney function and prevent other problems from happening down the road. And the low protein diet does a fantastic job in supporting that. Now, risks with the low protein diet. This is something that I think is really important to discuss, especially because with the renal diet, and you guys know we've covered things like low phosphorus, low potassium, low sodium, low fluids. There's a lot of low. And when we talk about being careful with things like this, sometimes people can over restrict. And protein, it is very important that you understand that you do need some protein. It's just not, you don't want to have too much. And the risks that come up with not enough protein are pretty severe. Your body does need protein, and it's the challenge is that metabolizing of the protein and the filtering of the protein. So with that, if you restrict protein too much and you try to go for like a 0-gram protein diet, which is not an advisable thing, that is not a helpful thing, what will happen is your body will be going after itself looking for protein. And where is protein stored in your body? I mean, where is it going to go for protein? It's going to go to your tissue. It's going to go to your muscles. It's going to break that down to get those components, those amino acids that it needs to be able to rebuild. And it sounds kind of weird, right? Like, so my body's going to break itself down to kind of rebuild itself, take care of itself. Well, yeah, if you're not giving it the nutrients it needs then it's going to be looking for it wherever it can find it. Your body is very resourceful and will do everything it can to keep alive. So you want to be really careful if you are to do a low protein diet. You want to be really careful if you do it on your own without a dietitian. At least, please speak with your doctor about it first. And you guys know that I am a huge advocate for working one-on-one with a dietitian. So ask your doctor for a referral to a dietitian, especially if you bring up something like a low protein diet. Anytime you mention diet, dietitian, right there, it goes hand in hand. So if you mention that you'd like to learn more and try a low protein diet for kidney preservation, ask your doctor for a referral to a dietitian. It's not required that you get one from your doctor. You can even ask a dietitian directly to, if they are available to take on clients and help you with a low protein diet. But I think it's really important that you do discuss it with your doctor, with your healthcare team first, because there might be something going on in your own health history or your health conditions in which a low protein diet wouldn't be good. For example, cancer. Cancer requires more protein, and that's going to be something that needs to be assessed when you're looking at how much protein you need to have in your body to take care of these multiple health issues. So be sure that you discuss with your healthcare team about your own protein needs, and please demand a referral to a renal dietitian. The guidelines, the international guidelines say everybody with kidney disease, no matter what stage, should be seeing a dietitian. That is the recommendation. That is the gold standard. That is across the board. So doctors should not be surprised if you're asking for a referral to a dietitian. Don't let them say you don't need one. That's not true, and that's not their call to make. So that's just my little, I'm going to jump off my soapbox. But hopefully that helps and motivate you all to get a renal dietitian to work with. All right, let me check really quick in some of the questions and comments. All right, let's see. Dawn, you've got a great question here. Is it okay to eat a half cup of brown rice, quinoa, or couscous as part of daily dinner with vegetables? What others would be good choices? So between these three that you specified, brown rice, quinoa, and couscous, I'm going to keep it really focused on the topic for today, which is low protein. The lowest protein option is going to be couscous, and then brown rice, and then quinoa is going to be the highest in protein. So depending on your protein needs, depending on what else, if you have anything else incorporated as part of your dinner, and even what kind of vegetables you have, because vegetables actually do have protein as well. So it's important to keep that in mind too. But I would say there are so many different types of grains, and even I myself, I need to get out and try different kinds. If anybody has any of their own alternative recommendations for grains, please feel free to drop it in the comments. Honestly, any of those I think could be a great addition, and a half cup is a very conservative amount. So generally, that's about a serving or so of carbohydrates. So you're not going to have many issues with that. If you guys have used Cronometer, I highly recommend using something like that. It's a food tracking app that you would put this information in, and it would spit back out the total, the daily amount of nutrients that you're getting, and tell you if you're on track for your goals. It's one of my absolute favorite methods of food tracking, and I do recommend it for a lot of people, my clients and tons of people. So Dawn, long answer short, it is really your call. When you're focused on, in this case, protein, couscous would be the lower protein option. Quinoa is going to be the highest protein option. So it's not that you can't have any of them. It's just a matter of maybe kind of switching it out every now and then and seeing what is going to be best for you and your diet. So Charlotte's asking about the low protein. Does this include plant protein? It does. And that is one of the big misconceptions with the renal diet, especially the plant-based renal diet, that plants do still have proteins. And a long time ago, even putting aside the CKD part of it, a long time ago, people would think, oh, if someone's vegan or vegetarian even, they're not getting enough protein. And this is something that personally, this is just my opinion, but I think marketing has done a really great job in creating this fear of, oh, you're not going to get enough. So you've got to have a supplement. You've got to have this. You've got to have that. And that's just really, really great marketing. And for a normal person, no health issues, a vegan or vegetarian diet is not going to be protein deficient because so many plant foods do have protein in them. And it is important to be aware that plant proteins will still add up within this low protein diet. So when you figure out how much protein you should be eating, that's again why it's really, really helpful to be using something like Cronometer to be able to see exactly how much your protein is adding up solely in a plant-based diet. Chickpeas, black beans, tofu, tempeh is a very high protein food. Not many people realize that, but it has a ton of protein. So it's something to keep in mind when you're switching to a plant-based diet. If you are focusing on a lot of tofu and tempeh and beans and edamame and soy milk, these kinds of things, you could still actually be on a higher protein diet. And while plant proteins are metabolized a little bit easier on the body and provide more nutrients than animal proteins do, the bottom line is still the protein amount. Regardless of the source, you want to look at the protein amount. And that's oftentimes what I'll do with clients is either we focus on shifting from animal to plants, or we really analyze the amount of protein and we shift the quantities. We talk about the difference, the portion sizes that they need to pay attention to in relation to their own protein target goal, how much they should be kept at. So let me see what else I've got here. Okay, low protein diet and pregnancy in patients with CKD. Pregnancy is a whole other realm of nutrition, and then you put CKD on top of it, and that's a lot. It's a lot of stuff to go into. There will be some modifications with protein, but you are creating a human person, and that is a really, really amazing task, but a lot of responsibility for sure. So in that case, 1,000% ask to see a dietitian, because it will be crucial that you work with somebody one-on-one to get a nutrition prescription and understand exactly what you should be eating so that you're protecting not only yourself, but also your baby. So that one I think is very, very important to work with a dietitian, and hopefully your doctor is being proactive with that, because it needs to be monitored and addressed pretty early on. Okay, let's see. MyFitnessPal, yes, Loza. MyFitnessPal is another great option. I like Cronometer. That's my preference because they cover things like Prowl, which we talked about in another video, and it's just a really phenomenal resource in looking at some of the nutrients that MyFitnessPal doesn't get into as much, but MyFitnessPal still is a good option. So that is definitely one that you should take a look at. And yes, proteins in fruits and vegetables. You guys know that I do a lot of posts on Facebook and Instagram about some kidney-friendly swaps and giving you information about potassium, protein, phosphorus in different products and different foods. Let me know in the comments if you think I should be doing more, if I should be posting more pictures that show you the protein in fruits and vegetables, if that would be helpful for you to learn, or maybe proteins in grains. I'm always open to hearing more from you guys about what you want to learn so that I can create that information and share it out for you all. Please let me know. So chlorella. Yeah, chlorella is a really big thing right now. I don't advise it. There's no evidence to say that it will do anything different compared to just eating fruits and vegetables, but it is considered like a supplement. And yes, because it is a condensing of the fruits and vegetables, well, primarily vegetables, it's condensing of the greens. It is going to have protein in it. So that's going to be something to be really mindful of. If you add that into your food, your smoothies, whatever it is, it will add protein in there as well. So please be careful with that. Okay, so let me go a little bit further into some more information for you guys. I only have a few minutes left, but I definitely wanted to give you guys some tips on what to do with a low protein diet and maybe some ideas on how you can swap some things out. Because again, a lot of foods that have a lot of protein in them, you want to be careful with on a low protein diet. So for example, if you use any kind of ground beef or any kind of ground meat, even, we've talked about this before, even like the Impossible meat, the meat substitutes, it's still high in protein. It's basically the same amount of protein, but they're just using different types of plant sources to make that plant equivalent. The whole purpose about the meat substitute line is to give people a non-animal way to get their protein in. So it's still going to be protein. But what you can do instead of the ground beef, you could do something like lentils. Lentils, even like canned lentils, I have relied on those many times. The canned lentils that are low in sodium, or just dry lentils that you cook up on the stove, or like my favorite, the Instant Pot, make for a really, really great type of ground meat substitute. We've done lentil tacos. We've done lentil like kind of casserole, like lasagna bakes. What else have we done? Lentil wraps. So many different things with lentils. I've used it within a sauce and put on our pasta, or do like zucchini noodles, which is a great way, again, to actually lower the protein, because whole wheat does have protein in it. So you can always swap it out for a vegetable. Or instead of the whole grain pasta, you could do like spaghetti squash. And that would be another way to get in more nutrients and get in less protein in the diet. That's another fantastic way to have a little bit less protein, but still have a really good meal that's going to be filling and satisfying and enjoyable. I've heard some people are pro spaghetti squash and some people are really anti spaghetti squash. Personally, I think it's a really fantastic option, but feel free to check that out or let me know if you've tried that out. Another option that I really am a huge fan of is switching from something like a go-to staple of chicken to tofu, and using tofu in whatever kind of recipe, because tofu is kind of like chicken in that it's a blank canvas. I mean, whenever you make chicken, you're not going to cook it unseasoned. You're not going to add any kind of flavor, marinade to it. You're always going to put something on it, right? The same thing goes with tofu. It just takes a little bit of that prep time, but it's so, so, so easy. And tofu has a lot less protein when you compare the same serving size. So 3 ounces of chicken, which is about the size of your palm, that'll give you about 26 grams of protein. But 3 ounces of tofu will give you 6 grams of protein. So it's a lot less protein, but you're still getting the same volume, the same amount of food. And then you compare that with, your preferred vegetables, your preferred grains if you want, even some beans or something like that, because you have a little bit more room, more flexibility with having less protein that you could add in some variety there. So I think that would be really, really fantastic to do a swap for. All right, so let me see here. Yeah. So Charlotte, you have a great story to share. You went from a GFR of 40 to 55 just by changing the diet alone. And that is absolutely fantastic, Charlotte. We hear a lot of that in Plant Powered Kidneys, not only with our private clients, but in the Facebook group. And it is really, really exciting to be able to see a lot of those transformations and hear that from you guys. And diet is such a powerful tool that you have at your disposal to protect and take care of your kidneys. And I really, really want to encourage you to revisit your diet. Think about your protein. If you're not sure about where you're at, just start by tracking. Again, use a food tracker, find out what's going on with your diet, find out where you're at, and that's going to give you so much insight into your own labs, into your own health results, and it's going to give you a starting point of where you should be going, because you don't know where you should be going if you don't know where you're starting from. You don't know if you need to restrict anything or lower anything or increase anything if you don't know where you're at to begin with. So that's really the number one thing that I'm encouraging. Anytime you're looking at a low XYZ type of diet, figure out how much you're taking in first to see if it needs to be any lower. Potassium is an example of one that many people restrict before they even realize how little they're already getting. Okay, so I've got to wrap up, you guys. I will be doing another live tonight with James on Dadvice to go over more about this topic, maybe give some other ideas or dive into more information for you about the low protein diet. In the meantime, you can go check out the article that I have up at plantpoweredkidneys.com/low-protein-diet. And that is where we have so much information, not only what I've talked about this morning, but even more resources. I have a few charts that'll list out the protein in animal foods, the protein in plant foods, so that you can see where protein is really coming from in the diet. But if you have any questions, feel free to send them our way, and we are happy to help out. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your morning, rest of your evening, wherever you're tuning in from. And I will be back here same time next week to do another live, and we're going to talk about another side of protein. And I think you're going to really be interested in that one as well. So we'll see you next week. Take care.